This is a CBS News special report. I'm Norah O'Donnell, and we are coming on the air as Congress gathers to officially certify the results of the November election. This marks the final step in the presidential race. The electoral votes from each state are counted, and Vice President Kamala Harris will carry out her constitutional duty as president of the Senate, overseeing the certification of Donald Trump's victory. Harris has accepted the 2024 results. Let's listen in.
Votes. Kamala D. Harris. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes. The whole number of electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for Vice President of the United States are as follows. J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio has received 312 votes. Tim Walz of the state of Minnesota has received 226 votes. This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected President and Vice President of the United States, each for a term beginning on the 20th day of January 2025, and shall be entered together with the list of the votes on the journals of the House and the Senate. Thank you very much.
The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, receiving a standing ovation there as she stands just to the right of the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
The purpose of the joint Senate having been concluded pursuant to
she's
Senate
wrapping it up there in her ceremonial role as Vice President and President of the Senate there. This, of course, usually a ceremonial and uneventful as January 6th, something we don't normally come on the air to cover. But 4 years ago, you will recall that thousands of pro-Trump rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol, resulting in millions of dollars in damage. 140 officers were wounded. People died on that day. We were live on the air for more than 9 hours covering that assault on the U.S. Capitol. And so today, you witness again the peaceful transfer of power. With me here is Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa. And Robert, the President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris trying to present that this is the peaceful transfer of power, and that they acknowledge that Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States.
Norah, good to be with you. As you said, this is a ceremonial moment for American democracy, a tradition to have the vice president oversee the congressional certification of a presidential election. But as you noted as well, it's important. It's important for American democracy and for the American people to see this unfold in real time. The country is functioning, even at a time of deep political divisions, and it brings back memories historically of January 1961, when Vice President Richard Nixon had to oversee the certification of John F. Kennedy's victory. You think back to January 6, 2001, when Al Gore had to certify the election of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. Mike Pence, in January of 2021, was under pressure from now President-elect Trump to overturn the election, but Pence, as we've deeply reported here at CBS, decided not to use this moment for any political purpose. He oversaw the certification of that election. And so we see once again the functioning of American democracy on the House of Representatives floor. You see the Vice President, Kamala Harris, meeting with the congressional delegation, J.D. Vance, the Vice President-elect, shaking hands right there on the House floor. This was a bitterly fought election at many turns. But here is J.D. Vance, Kamala Harris, allies of both of these campaigns, mingling in the place they all convene to conduct the business of the people. And when Vice President Harris walked into the Capitol today, Norah, she was asked by reporters, what does this all mean to you? And she replied in one sentence, it means democracy must be upheld by the people.
An excellent point, Robert Costa. Thank you. Want to bring in our congressional correspondent, Scott MacFarlane, on Capitol Hill. Scott, the Capitol on lockdown today, given what happened 4 years ago, designated for the first time in history as a national special security event. You have done some of the most extensive reporting of any journalist on what happened January 6, 4 years ago, and what has become the largest single investigation the Justice Department has ever undertaken into those that stormed on January 6th and committed that violence. What can you report to us today about the status of those, Scott?
This remains the largest criminal investigation and prosecution in U.S. history, Norah, still ongoing 4 years after the day. And this all happened today in a driving snowstorm here in Washington. Some of those members had to fight through the snow to be there. But to be clear, there's also this metaphorical storm cloud hanging over the Capitol. People have not erased the memories of January 6, 2021. When they did this last time, the fumes of chemical spray were in the air. There was blood on the Capitol floors, human waste on the walls. There were wounded, maimed, gassed, beaten police officers recovering from injuries. That's what happened last time. And one of the men who was running that proceeding just now, the Democrat who is top on the House Administration Committee, Joe Morelli of New York, he administered the task there. He told me before walking on the floor, he's worried all of this has been whitewashed. There were no vigils organized by Republican leaders who now control the House and Senate. There is a January 6 plaque to honor police officers mandated by law. It's never been hung, and no discussion of January 6th by House leaders as they walk to the floor today. As for the prosecutions, as of today, there are now about 1,600 federal defendants, 1,000 of whom have admitted their crimes. They've pleaded guilty. About 600 of them are accused of assaulting and resisting police officers, and not just with their bare hands, but with bear spray, knives, flagpoles. Nor there were guns brought by some of the rioters that day. One of them shot the gun outside the Capitol. None of this is happening in a vacuum. This historic moment on the House floor is quite a contrast from 4 years ago.
Scott MacFarlane on Capitol Hill. Scott, thank you. I want to bring in Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes, who is outside in that snowstorm that we have witnessed here in our nation's capital today. And Nancy, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, taking to print today to make sure that people don't forget what happened 4 years ago. What have you learned?
Hello, Norah. Yes, good afternoon from a very snowy White House, and especially White House. And you're right, the president and the vice president today have been looking to underscore in understated but serious ways the importance of what happened at the Capitol that we watched unfold before our very eyes 4 years ago, to ensure that it isn't whitewashed, as some have tried to do by insisting that somehow that was a day of love or a peaceful protest. So you saw the vice president, who we all just watched carry out her constitutional obligation on Capitol Hill. She released a video before all of that started this morning. Quick video just to say that the certification of the election is one of her duties, and that it is a very important part of democracy. She said the peaceful transfer of power is one of the most fundamental principles of American democracy. Translation, she, of all people, may not like the outcome of the election, but she is going to do her duty because that is what the Constitution demands. That's what democracy demands. And that's, of course, famously what Donald Trump did not want his own vice president, Mike Pence, to do 4 years ago on this very day. President Biden released an op-ed in the Washington Post yesterday entitled "What Americans Should Remember About January 6th." He, as well, looking to underscore what happened there. He said that an unrelenting effort has been underway to rewrite, even erase, the history of that day. He said that that history needs to be told and repeated because any nation that forgets its past is doomed to repeat it, Nora.
Nancy Cordes at the White House. Want to bring in Robert Costa one more time. And as the President of the United States says, wants to make sure that people don't forget what happened on January 6th, the President-elect Donald Trump has said he is going to very seriously consider pardoning some or almost all of those 1,600 defendants.
And one quick note for history, 4 years ago, so much of January 6th was not just the mob attacking the U.S. Capitol. It was the wave of objections from lawmakers. Today, Nora, not one single lawmaker objected to the certification of the most recent presidential election. And what a comeback for President-elect Donald Trump. Stunning in terms of American political history to go from being the president who oversaw January 6, 2021 to being a criminal convict in May of 2024. Now he's the president-elect of the United States, and the investigations of January 6 on the federal level have fallen away as he prepares to take office.
As you point out, even Donald Trump rebuked by the top members of his own party in Congress on that day 4 years ago on January 6th and called on him to call off the rioters. Robert Costa, thank you to all of our correspondents, producers, and crews for covering this day. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news. And tonight on the CBS Evening News, this has been a CBS News special report. I'm Norah O'Donnell.